Lost Ruins is another attempt at kind of the Metroidvania 2D Souls-like or even a Dead Cells kind of design. And while the game certainly boasts some very impressive animation, I feel like this is one of those games that's 2/3 amazing, with that last third being kind of the killer of the experience. But before we get to that, let's talk about what works with it. So, as you're watching the footage here, you can see that Lost Ruins definitely has comparisons to something like a Momodora, Reverie Under the Moonlight. And it feels like a combination of that with like a very basic Souls-like. And that will come into play when we talk more about the negative in a few minutes. But our story is that we play as the amnesiac heroine, that's her name, who wakes up in a strange land and is told that she must defeat the evil followers of an ancient evil witch. And if she can do that, she'll be able to return home to her actual reality. And that's going to require exploring a castle, killing bad guys, and finding loot and equipment. So, the big thing about Lost Souls is that there is no RPG progression in this game. There's no leveling up. Everything is handled via equipment. You are able to equip 2 melee weapons, or 2 weapons of any kind, as well as 2 spells that you can play around with. You have health and mana that you manage from the upper left. The gear or accessories are very similar to Momodora, in that each piece of gear provides a very specific boost or benefit. One piece could grant you additional bleed damage, another one could massively raise your attack when your health drops below a certain point, and there are plenty of other options there. And this is one of those games that kind of allows you to experiment and come up with a build that works best for you. For me, I use the Gladius sword, along with the accessories that go with it, that gives it increased attack speed, and even lifesteal. So at one point, I'm just like smashing like tables and chairs to regain my health. The game also features collectible like key items that will change your character, and these are the ways that you're going to gain kind of your pure upgrades, such as more health, more mana, etc, etc. Now, to the game's cred, it does feature substantial additional modes that you can play the game with. Besides the usual difficulties of easy, normal, hard, and hardcore, you can also unlock additional game mode variants, including a magic-only run, a assassin-only run, and even a special run that plays with the 3 of the boss characters, and it's kind of handled almost like a trine style, with each character having their own ability and you can swap between them as you see fit. And all this again is packed with a lot of challenging boss fights and just some really impressive animation. Now, one thing that is kind of very subtle that the game does that it kind of helps, but it's also kind of a non-issue at the same time, is how the physics of liquid and various objects or environmentals will interact. You can freeze water using Ice Spell to turn into, super cold water that does enhanced damage. You can electrocute wet enemies, douse enemies with oil before lighting them on fire. It's a very similar style to what we saw with Dead Cells, but not done, I think, as far as that game. So everything about Lost Ruins probably sounds amazing, especially again if you are a fan of action-focused games like Dead Cells, Momodora, and some of the other ones we've mentioned. But as I said at the start, there is one major knock that I think hurts this game enough that it will become an issue for a lot of people wanting to check this one out. And we're going to talk about that after this quick break. And as always, if you're interested in my books on design, here are my current offerings. For entry-level students, we have 20 Essential Games to Study, and then the Game Design Deep Dive series that takes an extensive look at different genres, with horror coming by the end of 2021. With Lost Ruins, as with any kind of action-based game, the combat system will basically be do or die. And for this one, there are some major issues that I think were put in intentionally to make the game difficult, but they end up just causing more frustration. So the first thing is that you have 0 iframes. This is one of those games where if an enemy hits you, and let's say they use like a multi-projectile attack or multiple hit combo, you get hit that one time, you are going to get hit for every piece of it. And it's very easy in this game to get stun locked by one very fast enemy or an enemy that shoots out lots of projectiles. Now, the other point about this, as you've probably watched so far in this video, combat is very clunky. What happens is that the second you start your attack animation, you are frozen in place until that attack animation ends. So if you're in the air and you use your attack, you lose all momentum. And this creates a very serious problem when it comes to fighting certain enemies. For one thing, it invalidates or greatly increases the frustration of using heavy weapons. I tried using a few of them during my play of this on stream, and when a weapon can take almost like a second to 2 seconds to probably like a second to a second and a half to swing, that is way too long for an action-focused game like this. Now, a big point about this game is that you can stun lock most enemies except for the larger kinds and some of the bosses. So you need that speed, because it's better to quickly hit an enemy 3 times for, let's say, 6 points of damage, versus take a slower time to hit them once for 18. And a lot of the challenge of this game, again, is going to come down to what accessories you equip. There are accessories that give you increased speed with two-hand weapons, and again, the game is set up very similar to Momodora, that with the right combinations of gear and accessories, you can break this game. And I'm sure there's somebody out there who's playing this who has the perfect two-handed weapon strat. But because it is tied to gear, it means that you're going to have to go quite a long time to collect those pieces. Now, in terms of the overall difficulty of Lost Ruins, this I would say would be on the moderately difficult side. If you are a fan of Momodora, then nothing I think Lost Ruins will do or does will kind of upset or be beyond that. But if you're not used to this kind of very punchy, very quick and difficult combat, then this game may be a little too much for you. But thankfully, the different difficulty settings will help. I played on, I think, 1 below hardcore, I think, for my run of it, and I still die quite a bit, especially at bosses. The UI is serviceable, but I really wish you could set up a hotkey for item use. This is one of those games where debuffs and stuff like bleed, poison, fire, stuff like that can do a number on your health, and there are not a lot of health upgrades. So during bosses that make use of those attacks, you're going to have to be constantly going back to your menu to use whatever is the correct healing item. And it can be a little cumbersome to go back and forth like that. Other than that, there really isn't anything else that I want to, or anything else I can say good or bad about Lost Ruins. It's an interesting action-adventure game, and I feel like if the combat was a little bit smoother, while not, I don't think going as fast as Dead Cells would work, but maybe something more in line with Momodora would make this, I think, a far more approachable game. If you are fans, again, of Momodora and of action slasher or action survival games like this, then Lost Ruins, I think, will work for you. But there are, I think, noticeably better examples of the genre for newcomers to kind of try or dip their toes into for the first time. So with that said, thank you so much for watching this review. I would like to thank the developers for giving me a press key to check this one out. If you'd like me to go your game in the future, please get in touch. Be sure to visit our Discord and Patreon link down below, and come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where examine the art and science of games. Once again, this has been Lost Ruins, and until next time, take care.